wanted everybody to get in the closet, and the next thing we knew, we heard just seen sky. My house is gone. It's just gone.
Devastating destruction after storms rip through Tennessee. Tonight, new reports of tornadoes just as so many communities are starting to clean up. I'm Ellison Barber in for Gadi, Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. We're tracking new tornado reports as severe weather continues to pummel parts of the country for a fourth straight day. The biggest danger zone right now remains across the south, where millions are said to be in the storm zone and can expect to see severe weather tonight and into tomorrow. Meanwhile, more storms are pushing through in places like North Texas and parts of the Upper Plains and Mid-Atlantic. As far as serious stuff, the Dallas-Fort Worth area is in the crosshairs. Damaging winds, hail, and even more tornadoes are a real threat this evening. NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns is tracking it all for us. Bill, how are things looking right now?
Not as bad as the last couple of nights, and we will take that any night. I mean, we've been in such a rut with every night dealing with a catastrophic, tornado hit in some small town somewhere. So we do have still the chance of getting isolated tornadoes tonight, but the wind damage threat is going to be much bigger as we go throughout the middle of the night. Let me explain. So we have a lot of areas under thunderstorm watches. The last couple of nights, we've had a lot of people under tornado watches. That means that thunderstorms are more capable of producing large hail and wind damage than tornadoes. The only tornado watch that we have left is from Junction, Texas, out here to Waco. Tonight, we're going to watch mostly this wind damage threat. So the only severe storms, notice the Dallas area, so far, fingers crossed, things have been looking great for you. All the storms missed you to the north, and now they're heading down to the south. Waco, Texas, severe thunderstorm warning. There's a little hook on this one, too, so we'll have to watch and see if that becomes tornado warned. But that's south on Interstate 35, south of Waco. We've already had baseball-sized hail with a couple of these storms that have done significant damage to vehicles. So tonight, the storms that I just mentioned here, by the time we get to tomorrow morning, they're going to be all the way in Georgia. They're going to fly all the way through our southern states here along the Gulf Coast overnight. This hatched area, that means we have a chance of seeing like excessive wind damage, 75-mile-per-hour plus winds. So think of like a low-end hurricane, think of like an EF1 tornado. That has enough potential for a lot of power outages, down trees on homes. And the fact that it's happening in the middle of the night makes it worse. People are going to be asleep, and all of a sudden you're going to hear like the roar of the wind. You're going to wake up. So that's at 8 p.m. tonight. This is where we are as we go throughout this hour. Then I'll pause this at 1 a.m. Notice those storms are knocking on the door at Jackson. So it flies through Louisiana, and then it goes through Mississippi and Alabama through the middle of the night. By the time we get to 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, this line of storms is still going through Georgia. And so if we get this path of destruction for hundreds of miles with extreme winds, we will call this a derecho. We'll wait and see if it materializes and how it happens later on tonight. And the reason we have a severe weather threat tomorrow in areas of Georgia and also Florida is because of that line. Once we get through about 10 a.m. that goes off the coast, then we're clear. No severe weather as we go throughout the rest of Friday, besides what happens early in the morning with these storms. Storm-free, clean up, beautiful day, sunshine. We need it. We deserve it in the middle of the country. We will see showers returning on Saturday, but you notice that on Saturday and on Sunday for Mother's Day, there is no severe weather threat. So we finally get that much-needed break after we've been on a really incredible path here with so many tornadoes and deadly tornadoes and even strong tornadoes over the last couple of days. So you notice on Sunday, damp and cool. We will have to watch that flood threat because on Sunday, the same areas that just got hit are also going to get hit with more heavy rain, but it does not look to be as severe, Ellison. So, we've had a lot of what we call EF4 tornadoes over the last, 3 to 4 nights, 150 to 200 mile-per-hour winds. There's nothing that looks like that that's coming our way. And you've shown the pictures. Devastation has been incredible.
Bill Cairns, thank you. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us now from Dallas. Priscilla, what is it looking like there right now and in other parts of the state?
Yeah, Ellison, it is an overcast day here. The winds are starting to pick up now as these thunderstorms begin to move through the area. We know that Dallas is among the counties that is under a tornado watch until 9 p.m. tonight. The climate unit tells me that the likelihood of a tornado happening is fairly low, but the real threat here is going to be the high winds of up to 70 miles per hour and the hail. We're already beginning to see reports of some hail along the Oklahoma border and in other parts of the state. So certainly going to be watching for that. And of course, this comes after days of severe weather that we've seen over the past week, particularly with that flooding that we saw in Houston going into the weekend and across southeast Texas, where there was just so much rain that we were seeing a lot of flooding. There were homes that were completely destroyed from that flooding, more than 600 evacuations by first responders that had to be done as a result of that severe weather. And it's really part of a larger pattern that we're seeing across the country. Just to put this in context, yesterday alone, there were more than 400 reports of storms happening. And for the past 5 days, there have been reports of more than 100 tornado reports each day. So this is the kind of severe weather pattern that we're seeing. But the good news is that by tomorrow, it's expected to let up at least for many millions of people, with the severe weather threat down to only about 4 million people, which is significantly lower than what we're seeing today, where it was as high as 68 million at one point today. Ellison?
Priscilla Thompson, thank you. In Middle Tennessee, a tornado carved a path of destruction overnight. At least 2 people were reported dead across the state. Tonight, the National Weather Service confirming an EF3 hit the town of Columbia, meaning winds of up to 165 miles per hour. Take a look at the destruction. Home after home damaged or destroyed altogether. This is what that tornado looked and sounded like as it tore through Tennessee neighborhoods last night. NBC's Priya Sridhar shows us more of the heartbreaking scenes on the ground.
In Columbia, Tennessee, tornadoes reducing homes to rubble.
This is a catastrophic tornado. It is one of the more severe storms we've probably seen in the last 5 to 10 years.
A huge swath of forest leveled, with trees snapped like matchsticks. Lives uprooted in Maury County, Tennessee.
I started seeing the clouds, and that's when I heard the roar, and that's when I hollered at everybody to get in the closet, and then the next thing we knew, we heard just seen sky. My house is gone. It's just gone. I lost 2 dogs, and we're still looking for my mom and my aunt.
More than 80 twisters across 17 states over the last 3 days. The storms bringing chaos across the South, intense rain and flooding. Entire cities without power, cars crushed by reported tornadoes. Large hail, heavy rains, and high winds turning deadly in Lone Mountain, Tennessee.
Our thanks to Priya Sridhar. Here in New York, Stormy Daniels was back on the stand today as part of Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial. Trump's defense team grilled the former adult film actress in a brutal round of cross-examination, while prosecutors argued that Trump falsified business records to cover up a $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels. Trump's side suggested that she made it all up for publicity and money. True to her name, Stormy fought back and did so in such a way that Trump's lawyers called it unfair and requested a mistrial, which the judge quickly denied. NBC News correspondent Yasmin Vasugian has the latest from the courthouse in Lower Manhattan.
Ellison, it was an incredible day in court today, starting off the day with Stormy Daniels on the stand in cross-examination, in which Susan Neckles, an attorney for Donald Trump, painted Stormy Daniels as someone with a lot of holes in her story, trying to chip away at her credibility as a witness testifying in this trial. They talked about how Stormy Daniels seemed to be someone who had an axe to grind with the former president of the United States, who was just looking to make some money off of this alleged story, this scheme, this thing that she had drawn up about them meeting back in 2006, something that the former president continues to deny. Although in doing that, it seems as if Susan Neckles had painted Stormy Daniels also as a victim at one point, saying that she was a former adult film star. This is something that she should have expected if they allegedly had this sexual interaction back in 2006, in which she came out more as like a whistleblower defending herself on the stand than what Susan Neckles was actually going for. And then there was redirect from the prosecuting attorneys, in which some of the interviews in which Stormy Daniels gave at the time, from an In Touch interview in 2011 to an interview to Vogue magazine in 2018 to an interview to Anderson Cooper in 2018 as well, in which the prosecuting attorney said, listen, they didn't offer up everything that you said, did they? Was everything accurate that you gave in those interviews? No, it wasn't. some of that was kept out of those interviews, hence some of the reasons why maybe there was some misinformation given in those interviews that you revealed in that cross-examination. It was certainly an incredible day in court for this major witness for this trial, Stormy Daniels. But really the star witness of this entire trial, Ellison, is not people like possibly Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. It is the documents, and that is why a witness that took the stand today, Madeleine Westerhout, also an incredibly important witness, a former assistant to the former president of the United States in the Oval Office, the person that received those checks that were sent to her from Trump Tower for Donald Trump to actually sign those reimbursement checks to Michael Cohen, a really important piece to the puzzle in putting this whole alleged scheme together for the prosecution as they build this story for the jury. I will say two major decisions at the end of the day also made, incredibly important to keep in mind as well. A motion denied for a mistrial because the judge essentially saying, listen, it was on you, the defense, to make those objections. And in fact, the former president has continuously denied the sexual encounter with Stormy Daniels, hence the reason why she had to elicit that type of testimony from Stormy Daniels, the details of the testimony of Stormy Daniels that she gave back from 2006, and also the motion denied to amend the gag order in which the former president wanted to be able to go after some of the witnesses that have taken the stand, specifically Stormy Daniels, from his point of view, to be able to correct the record. Judge Juan Merchan denying that motion as well. So a lot happening in court today. More to come tomorrow morning. Court beginning at 9:30 a.m. Ellison, back to you.
Yasmin Vasugian, thank you. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Cinadella for more on this. So, Angela, let's kind of like pick up where Yasmin left off. I mean, so many people were glued to the details in Stormy Daniels' testimony, right? Particularly those scandalous details as it relates to this alleged affair. But ultimately, those details aren't really that relevant to the case, right? Because this isn't a case about whether or not they had sex in 2006, but whether or not Trump committed business fraud. Those details, though, presumably go towards helping the prosecution establish some sort of motive, right? Do you think the details helped the prosecution, or do you think they hurt the prosecution?
Ellison, that is the million-dollar question, and it really comes down to the role of the jury here. So we know, obviously, the jury's role is to determine whether or not there was a violation of the law, if there was criminal intent, met the elements of the crime. But ultimately, the jury's role is to decide right versus wrong, to administer justice, to recoup what was gone from victims. So what I think is fascinating about Stormy's whole testimony here is that she was almost presented by the prosecution as a victim here. Look, this is a crime where there's no real victim the prosecution's putting forth. So then the jury looks at this victim, who also is portraying her story almost as a victim of assault, and wondering if they identify and empathize with her. With all those details, it gives so much color. Did the jury empathize, or was it the opposite? Did they feel then that Donald Trump was the victim? Did they feel that with all those details that were extraneous, that then he was the victim of a shakedown or extortion? So with a trial, there's like two levels of fighting here. There's the legal angle, which is obviously what you hear most about, but then there's this psychological battle, and that's where we are.
We heard today after court ended from one of Trump's attorneys that the prosecutors, the DA, said they were not going to call Karen McDougal to take the stand. That is the former Playboy model who had claimed she had an affair with Donald Trump as well, and there was allegedly some sort of payment exchanged. What do you make of that choice? Does that read to you like they didn't think it went well, so let's not try again? Or is it we got everything we needed from Stormy Daniels, so we don't need Karen McDougal?
Yeah, so I think it's both. I think the prosecution at every point tends to pivot. They look at what happened in the past, what was working. You'll also notice the tenor here, and you have a very salacious, splashy witness, then followed by very serious bookkeeping witnesses. And it's really just gone in lockstep like that. Now, I think they realized that Stormy was an enormous risk here, that even though she made headway for the prosecution, she also may have made headway for the defense. So I think in that decision, was Karen McDougal might also be too risky. We got enough of the lurid details out there. And it goes back to what I said about the victim. Perhaps one victimization of Trump as a possible victim of extortion was enough.
And we did hear what Yasmin touched on at the end there, this idea of documents. Madeleine Westerhout, when she took the stand, started going through kind of this timeline, and Michael Cohen specifically, and whether or not he had clearance and came to meet with Donald Trump on a date that he'd said. That was brought up, and she addressed that directly. Do you think we're going to hear from Michael Cohen soon, or do you think the prosecution waits until the very end to bring him out?
So again, I think this is like a split-second decision. Yeah. It's not even something the prosecution might know. I mean, they would know if they're bringing him out tomorrow, but they look at the tenor of how the trial's going, and then they change their mind. So I think Michael Cohen's either coming tomorrow or he's coming next week. But I do think that with this bookkeeping executive assistant who gave these great details, she also talked about how much she loved Donald Trump, and so that could have also gone to the defense. So I feel like they course correct. So it's possible they're like, okay, now we have a witness who said she likes Donald Trump. Now let's have a witness who hates him. So maybe it's back Michael Cohen on the stand. We'll see, Ellison.
All right, Angela Sinadella, thank you as always. We appreciate it. Don't go anywhere because we are just getting started. Up next, brand new police body camera footage of what started as a disturbance but ended with a U.S. airman shot to death. NBC's Gadi Venegas will break it all down. Plus, could there be a link between the chemicals in hair relaxers and cancer? There's now a growing number of lawsuits from women who say that's how they got sick. That is straight ahead. And later this hour, you will meet a barber who has gone viral by bringing confidence back to women, one cut at a time. That's in tonight's Best of Us. So stay tuned. Welcome back. More on a deadly police-involved shooting in Florida in just a moment. But first, here's some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. Harvey Weinstein won't be sent back to California while he awaits a retrial in New York. The movie mogul was in court today. He'll remain behind bars in New York after not consenting to a California extradition request to serve time there for a rape sentence. Weinstein's New York conviction was overturned last month, and now New York prosecutors are working to retry him. An appeals court dismissed Hunter Biden's attempts to throw out his gun case. The judge decided not to consider the merits of his appeal, which basically means the case moves forward. Biden pleaded not guilty to gun charges back in October. The mayor of Houston accepted the police chief's resignation there. It's after a scandal involving suspended cases. Chief Troy Finer is accused of suspending over 200,000 incident reports dating back to 2016. Some of those included sexual assault reports. Apparently, they were never investigated because of a lack of personnel. A 4-year-old girl was killed in San Antonio in a shooting there last night. 4 others were hurt when 2 men shot at a home in the city. The suspects apparently shot more than 20 times. It's still not clear exactly who those suspects are. TikTok is starting to label AI-generated content. It's going to apply to content uploaded from outside of the platform. It comes as they're trying to add more safeguards around AI and try to combat misinformation on the platform. In Florida, police just released the body camera footage of the fatal shooting of U.S. airman Roger Fortson. The footage shows the lead up to police knocking at Fortson's apartment door and the moment shots were fired. The sheriff's office is saying Fortson came to the door with a gun, but you can hear him say, "I don't have it," in this footage. Here's part of it, but we do want to warn you, it is disturbing.
Sheriff's office, open the door. Step out. Drop the gun! Drop the gun! It's over there. Drop the gun! I don't have it. 312, shots fired. Suspect down. Do not move!
The Fortson family says that police entered the wrong apartment, which the sheriff's office says is inaccurate, claiming that they entered the apartment because of reports of a disturbance. NBC News correspondent Gadi Venegas joins us now from Miami. Gadi, based on this body camera footage, what more do we know about how this went down?
Ellison, so we just saw a brief part of that video that was shared by authorities, right? So in that video, we can hear what happens, but there's also more footage of what happened right before. So authorities are saying that they were called because a disturbance was reported. Now, earlier in the day before this body cam footage was released, we had a press conference that was offered by the family of Roger Fortson and their attorney. In that press conference, they shared specific details they say they learned from Roger's girlfriend, who was on the phone with them when this incident happened, and they were having a call using FaceTime. Now, part of those details indicated, according to the attorney, that the girlfriend thought that when the officer came to knock at the door, Roger went to the door and he was unable to see who was at the door. She also told Crump, the attorney, that the peephole was covered. At least Roger thought the peephole was covered, and that's why he went to his room to retrieve a gun that he legally owned. And the girlfriend also told the attorney, or as the attorney shared that information, that she said that the officer burst through the door. Now, what we can see from the body cam footage is that the officer did not burst through the door, and we don't see the officer covering the peephole. So there are slightly different versions from what we see in that video and what was shared by the family. Let's hear part of this press conference that was offered by the family.
She called me and said, "Mama," she said, "the sheriff just kicked in Roger's door, and I heard them say something about 3 shots." I told her, I said, "Don't hang up that phone." And I just started calling everybody, and I was so discombobulated. Everybody said the only thing I was saying was Roger.
So we can hear Roger Fortsum's mother talking about the conversation that she had with his girlfriend after the incident happened. Now, there's a lot of questions that remain. That video that was shared by the sheriff's department doesn't show what happened after he was shot and what kind of aid was given to Roger once he was on the floor. We did see a different video that was shared by the family, part of the FaceTime call that the girlfriend recorded. But that, more than showing images, it has audio as to what happened after. You can hear the officers go into the apartment, but we can't see clearly what they did. And also, we'll have to look and see what the protocols are after someone is shot and what the officers have to do. So there's still a lot of questions that remain unanswered here, Ellison.
So, Gadi, in terms of some of those questions ultimately being answered, what happens next here? Will there be a more thorough police investigation? Do the attorneys for Fortsum's family, do they plan to move ahead with legal action?
So the Florida Department of State authorities are going to look into this. They're going to go into this investigation, right? So there's a lot of details that this is the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. A lot of details that they have to go over. One of those details is the disturbance call, that 911 call that initially was made, and that's the reason why the sheriff was called to that address, right? Now, in the body cam footage, we do see the sheriff speak to someone when he arrives at the apartment, and there's a person that tells the officer to go to the apartment that it appears he went to. Now, the family's attorney is saying that they believe the officer went to the wrong apartment. So that's one of the questions that has to be answered. Who made that 911 call and exactly what was reported and what is it that they said was happening inside of the apartment? And also, as the state authorities continue with this investigation, they also have to look at the full body cam video and also the full video that was recorded from that FaceTime call. The family's attorney said that the part that they have shared is also a small part of a whole video that they have. One more thing that they have announced is that the girlfriend will also be holding a press conference to share more details as to what she witnessed when she was on the phone when all of this happened, Allison.
Gadi Venegas in Miami, thank you. The former interpreter of MLB star Shohei Ohtani has agreed to plead guilty to bank and tax fraud after being accused of illegally transferring $17 million out of Ohtani's account without the baseball star's knowledge. Federal prosecutors say the former interpreter used the money to pay off massive gambling debts that he'd racked up since 2021. Let's bring in NBC's Steve Patterson for more on this. Steve, walk us through what we know right now. What counts is or was he facing, and sort of where do things go from here?
So, Allison, Ipe Mizuhara has agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of bank fraud and 1 count of subscribing to a false tax return. He's looking at more than 30 years in federal prison, all because officials say Mizuhara has a voracious appetite for gambling and that he was in way over his head. The federal complaint now reveals that between 2021 and 2024, Mizuhara placed about 19,000 bets with an average of about $13,000 per bet. He made something like $140 million, but lost about $180 million. So he owed more than $40 million. The complaint also details how Mizuhara changed the information on Ohtani's bank account, including things like his phone number, his address, and then went even so far as to impersonate Ohtani to deceive bank employees and make wire transfers an estimated 24 times. The U.S. attorney saying the extent of the defendant's deception and theft is massive. He took advantage of his position of trust to take advantage of Mr. Otani and fuel a dangerous gambling habit. Mizuhara is set to be arraigned next week. Ellison?
So, Steve, do we know if Otani is going to get any of this money back?
We don't know. I mean, part of the court order, on top of obviously the possible prison time, will be paying the $17 million back in restitution. But with all the international transfers and Mizuhara's own upcoming legal woes, it's hard to imagine how even some of that money gets back to the big baseball star. Ellison.
And Steve, before you go, I understand there is some sort of TV series being developed related to this. What is going on there?
Yeah, Hollywood is so fast with this stuff, aren't they, Ellison? Yes, we don't know much about it, but Lionsgate Television is reportedly in early development on a series that focuses on the scandal. Variety is reporting that there's no writer or network attached to the project, but obviously, you know, it's a great story. Ellison?
Steve Patterson in Los Angeles, thank you. Coming up, a Boeing plane skidded off the runway during takeoff in Senegal. We have those details and other stories trending around the world. But first, you gotta see this. It's official. Justin and Hailey Bieber are expecting their first child together. The couple announced the news on Instagram earlier today. They showed off the baby bump by sharing this video and pictures. Congrats to them. We'll be right back. Welcome back. President Joe Biden draws a line in the sand with Israel over Rafah. We'll explain coming up, but first let's take a quick look around the world. We still do not know what caused a Boeing 737 to catch fire and skid off of the runway at a Senegal airport today. Passengers say they had to jump down emergency slides in the dark while flames engulfed one side of the plane. The Air Senegal flight was headed to the neighboring country of Mali. Boeing referred all requests for comment to the airline. Loaves of bread are being pulled off of store shelves in Japan after, quote, rat remains were found in them. Local media says at least 2 people who bought the bread complained about finding a rodent in it, or at least parts of a rodent. A Tokyo factory has stopped production of the bread, and now over 100,000 loaves are being recalled. The company has apologized and promised compensation. 2 years ago, Thailand was the first country in Asia to legalize cannabis. Now its prime minister says he wants to outlaw the drug again, except for strict medical purposes, which would put a significant dent in the domestic marijuana industry. One local report says it could be worth $1.2 billion by next year. Israel has qualified for the final round of Eurovision, and some people are not happy. Between 10 and 12,000 people, according to Swedish police, marched through the streets of Malmö today, calling on Israel to be excluded from the contest. A smaller pro-Israel protest did take place around the same time. Some protesters say that Israel never should have been allowed to compete in Eurovision, pointing to the fact that Russia was kicked out of the competition in 2022 after launching its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In a new interview with CNN, President Biden is making it clear that not only is he against an Israeli military operation in southern Gaza, but that he wants the U.S. to have no part in it.
Civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers. And I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem.
Meanwhile, ceasefire negotiations are over for the time being with no resolution. NBC News correspondent Hala Gourani has more.
Ceasefire talks have ended in Cairo, this latest round not producing an agreement between the warring parties. Hamas has returned to Doha, Qatar, the Israeli delegation back to Israel. And the CIA director, Bill Burns, a veteran diplomat who was overseeing and going on several diplomatic missions across the region, overseeing these talks, has gone back to the United States. Some of the major sticking points are on the release schedule. We understand demand of the hostages, with Hamas proposing the release in phase 1 of 33 hostages, dead or alive, but Israel insisting that they should all be alive. But more broadly speaking, Hamas wants an end to the war. It wants a withdrawal of the Israeli military, and the Israeli government has not been willing to commit to that. We are also getting reaction from the Israeli Prime Minister to the U.S. President Joe Biden's statements that the U.S. will potentially continue to withhold offensive weaponry from Israel if they go ahead with a Rafah offensive in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. We're hearing from the Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has said we are determined and we are united to defeat our enemy with or without, essentially, he said, the help of the United States. And this is all happening against the backdrop of a deteriorating humanitarian situation inside of Gaza. Tens of thousands of people fleeing what they fear will be a big military onslaught in Rafah, many of them with nowhere to go.
Hala Garani in Cairo, Egypt. Thank you. Still to come, thinking of getting an airline credit card, or maybe you already have one? Well, federal regulators are looking into if they're actually working or if they're a ripoff. We'll explain, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following. Today, 2 skiers died during an avalanche in Utah. Rescue operations began after it was reported 3 people were trapped. 1 person was rescued. The bodies of 2 others were discovered a short time later. Their names have not yet been released. Oakland port officials are voting on renaming Oakland International Airport to San Francisco Bay Oakland International Airport. This has led to a lawsuit from the city of San Francisco claiming a trademark violation, but Oakland's not backing down. They say the change will clear up travelers' mix-ups without ditching the beloved OAK code. The city of San Diego is in hot water after a homeowner filed another lawsuit against the city. He's claiming the city's negligence of storm drains led to severe flooding in January of 2024. And he's not alone. Nearly 300 plaintiffs are joining the suit, which condemns city leaders for policies that they say have left hundreds of people displaced. Federal regulators are looking into whether or not all those credit card points we love to use are actually worth all of that spending. More than 40% of Americans use reward travel credit cards for perks like better seats on planes and even free reward travel. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung is here to explain if these cards truly live up to the hype and if they should be regulated. Hey, Brian.
Hey there. Well, the Department of Transportation and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau held a hearing this morning to look at these airline credit cards, which oftentimes will dangle these really big rewards like 40, 60, 100,000 bonus points just for signing up. But the problem is that they come with pretty hefty annual fees, as much as $650 in some cases, and with interest rates that are higher than the national average. These airline credit cards carrying borrowing costs of somewhere close to 25%. The average rate for an average credit card is about 24%. So there's questions now within the government about whether or not these rewards are making it worth it to take on that type of financial risk, especially if you're not able to pay the bills on time. And moreover, for the people that can take on that financial burden, well, are they actually getting the best bang for their buck? Are airlines making it easy to redeem those points? Are they actually following through on those sign-up bonuses? The hearing this morning featured airline executives, advocacy groups, union members, as well as consumers themselves. There's no immediate action, but Rohit Chopra, who's the director of the CFPB, told me in an earlier interview that he could see the case for potentially regulation or even legal action against companies that don't properly market and then follow through on what these credit cards are supposed to do for consumers. For those consumers that are considering getting one of these airline credit cards with these big bonuses, always consider whether or not you can afford the annual fee. Try to double check to see if that deal is actually the best out there. And then lastly, try to use rewards cards that are actually with the airline that you fly the most. Back to you.
Brian Chung, thank you. Today, the Department of Homeland Security held a briefing on a newly proposed rule that would speed up the processing of migrants at the southern border to cut down the number of illegal crossings. Meanwhile, an NBC News investigation reveals there could be other issues at the southern border, including new ethical concerns that have to do with some top Border Patrol officials and their involvement with tequila. NBC's Julia Ainsley has the exclusive report.
Tonight, these top Border Patrol officials pictured at a tequila distillery in Mexico are now part of an internal investigation into whether they violated ethics or security protocols, current and former officials tell NBC News. These photos, which were posted on social media, shows Border Patrol Chief Jason Owens, Rio Grande Valley Sector Chief Gloria Chavez, and others with Mexican tequila maker Francisco Javier Gonzalez. Sources with knowledge of the relationship between Gonzalez and the officials say he was working to create a Border Patrol tequila to be unveiled at the Border Patrol Centennial celebration. Internal investigators now asking whether the CBP leaders properly disclosed their contact with Gonzalez, a foreign national, and whether they accepted anything that would violate ethics rules, officials tell NBC News. The Tequila Project has been shelved amid the ongoing investigation.
When you saw those pictures, what did you make of that?
So this looks a little odd. This is not the sort of thing that normally happens, even with people off duty, unless there's some plausible explanation.
In a statement, CBP says it has confidence in its leaders and thoroughly investigates all allegations and takes appropriate action to address any issues identified throughout the course of investigations. It all comes during a tumultuous period for Border Patrol. And the last year and a half, 2 top officials left the agency after allegations surfaced of sexual misconduct. And a whistleblower report recently questioned why a top medical officer tried to order fentanyl lollipops to bring with him while providing security for the UN General Assembly. While Border Patrol Tequila is now off the menu, the agency is still preparing for its 100th anniversary later this month. The celebration includes 2 golf tournaments, a parade, and a black tie gala, all sponsored by DHS contractors who get hundreds of millions in government contracts. Customs and Border Protection said its finance and ethics officers are conducting careful reviews around the centennial events. Julia Ainsley, NBC News, Washington.
Hair relaxers have been a staple in the homes and salons of black women for years. Now some are suing the companies after the chemicals in the products have been linked to a number of health issues, including cancer. The FDA says it plans to propose a ban on some of the chemicals, but there hasn't been a whole lot of movement. NBC News Now anchor Zincle SMY has this report.
Start with the basics. What made you say, I want to get a chemical hair relaxer, a straightener?
I wanted a job. She wanted a job. I had just graduated from college. Going to an employee with an afro back in those days would not have cut it.
These 5 women used chemical hair straighteners for decades. They eventually noticed changes to their hair and health. Some chemicals in hair straightening products, like formaldehyde, are now linked to an increased risk of cancer, according to multiple studies.
If you all had known the risks associated with the chemicals found in hair straighteners, relaxers, would you have still used them?
No.
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 Definitely no.
No.
Marnita Ballard was diagnosed with endometrial cancer at 37 years old.
It made me feel like my womanhood was taken away because I don't have children and I couldn't have children. So, you know, to hear that at a young age.
A study from the International Journal of Cancer shows chemical hair straighteners can increase the risk of hormone-related cancers in women, including breast, ovarian, uterine, and endometrial. All of these women have had one of those cancers.
It's very personal, it's very painful.
Of all of you here, who has had a hysterectomy?
Now they're each taking legal action, joining a growing number of other women around the country. Several companies being sued say the allegations have no legal or scientific merit.
If it's something that will hurt us, then it needs to be removed.
In 2022, the NIH released a decades-long study about chemical relaxers and uterine cancer. Shortly after, the FDA looked into a ban on formaldehyde in hair straightening products. The agency planned to propose a ban by April 30th of this year, but that deadline was missed. The U.S. is markedly behind others. Canada, China, and the European Union have issued bans or restrictions on the use of formaldehyde in products. Late today, the FDA told NBC News it's still working on a proposed ban, saying it continues to be a high priority, but the rulemaking process takes time, adding the FDA's new estimated deadline for the proposed ban is July.
If there had been awareness, we would have had an opportunity to make a better decision. And I think some of our story may be different.
A temporary hairstyle with what these women say are permanent consequences. Zinklea Samoa, NBC News, Atlanta, Georgia.
There's a new industry growing off the coast of Maine. Kelp farming, something that started as a way for some fishermen to pay the bills during the off-season. Now a new generation of farmers are making it a side hustle, making that side hustle the main course. NBC News correspondent George Solis takes us there.
Just below the surface here in the Gulf of Maine, underwater gardens growing a crop that's not only nutritious, but could help fight climate change.
The way it shines in the light is just absolutely beautiful.
It's golden. Ken Sparta.
It's pretty magical.
Is a man who lives, breathes, and literally eats kelp.
Which has like that delicious crunch.
In 2018, he joined a growing number of Maine fishermen and lobstermen, now also farming kelp each winter.
They can go out and grow 100,000 pounds of this stuff, and it's, helps pay for that large boat that they have to have for lobstering.
Maine's cold, pristine waters are the ideal environment for the cash crop, which doesn't need irrigation, pesticides, or fertilizers.
It's an incredibly clean process.
Clean enough to eat straight out of the water.
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. And it's actually helping to clean up the water it grows in.
Kelp is one of the things that is a tool to restoring the ocean, and it has tons and tons of benefits to our ocean environment.
Jacqueline Robidoux is a seaweed specialist with Maine Sea Grant at the University of Maine. She says elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon have been building up in our waterways because of runoff from farms, where they contribute to ocean warming and acidification. But kelp absorbs those chemicals from the water as it grows, helping the environment around it. And that matters. Last year, Maine had the lowest lobster catch in over a decade. Experts say it's partly because of climate change. Sparta says kelp isn't just good for the planet, it's good for people's pockets too.
We have folks here in Maine that are working on making bioplastics out of it. It's definitely being used in the cosmetics industry.
It can also be processed into animal feed and organic fertilizer. But some people in Maine seem most excited about its place on the dinner plate. We visited during Seaweed Week, when restaurants celebrate Maine's kelp harvest with themed food and drinks.
It's really kind of blossoming and booming, and everybody's trying to get involved and put some kelp in their diner.
At Ken Sparta's Freeport Oyster Bar, it's Seaweed Week every week. The staff is given carte blanche to create with kelp. Next course.
Kelp burger, got ranch on there, which is a kelpie ranch, seaweed salad, lo mein noodle salad. We made some kelp dust and made kimchi with that. This is another part of the kelp, which I pickled. And then this right here is the triple threat kelp chili.
You would never know there's no meat in theirs.
Add in a few drinks to wash it down.
This one here is the Old Man in the Sea, and it's based on kelp-infused mezcal.
And you can see why people here are a bit kelp crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Maine is the kelp capital of America, followed closely by Alaska, and other states are getting on board, making seaweed farming the fastest growing aquaculture sector in the country. But the U.S. makes up about 0.01% of global seaweed production.
We are a very small fish in a globally very big pond, and understanding lessons learned from around the world is really key as we think about what our future is.
To Ken Sparta and his crew, that future is bright, golden, and glistening.
It's environmentally positive, it's nutritionally amazing for us to eat, and it's such a good food.
Our thanks to George Solis for that report. Before we go, it is time for the future of everything. We told you recently about Elon Musk's company, Neuralink, implanting a device into a patient's brain. Well, it appears there was a bit of a problem. We'll explain, so stay tuned. Remember in January when Elon Musk's Neuralink implanted a device into a 29-year-old patient's brain with the goal of helping patients with paralysis?
I love playing chess, and so this is one of the things that y'all have enabled me to do, something that I wasn't able to really do much the last few years, especially not like this. I had to use like a mouse stick and stuff, but now it's all being done with my brain. If y'all can see the cursor moving around the screen, that's all me.
Well, despite its initial success, in a blog post, Neuralink said the patient had a number of threads that retracted from his brain in the weeks following the procedure. So what exactly does that mean? Let's bring in NBC News medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal to help explain all of this for us. Okay, so Dr. Syal, let's just back up a minute because we mentioned threads retracting. Explain what we're talking about here, because threads are a tiny, like hair-like sort of thing that connects to the main product, integral to the product working itself, but explain to us what little components we're talking about and how this works to start with.
Yeah, Allison, I think the best thing I can do is show a video of it, and we actually have a video of what this chip looks like. And you know what Neuralink is? It's a computer chip about the size of a quarter. You can see there on your screen, followed by a bunch of tiny little threads, about 64 threads. That then, you know, the chip sits close to the skull, Allison. It's surgically implanted, and these threads are like little tail-like projections that go into the part of the brain that controls movement. And so the goal of Neuralink really here is to restore movement in people like Nolan Darbaugh, you saw in that video. He was a diving accident victim, but people with ALS or other neurologic diseases. Remember, like nerves you really cannot restore them once they get damaged or severed. It's really, really hard to repair. So the goal here is to eventually give these people function back in their limbs.
So when I first heard about there being an issue, I had two kind of different thoughts, and I'd love for you to just break down sort of your thoughts on both of them. I thought, okay, what does this mean big picture for efforts to use this sort of technology for a large group of people? And smaller picture, what does it mean for Nolan, the 29-year-old who currently has that in his head right now? To me, it sounds like threads being loose, maybe floating around somehow in your brain. It doesn't sound great, but I'm not a doctor.
It doesn't sound great. And you know, foreign objects in the brain, things that are just floating around, obviously we worry about them. But Allison, the caveat here is we don't know a lot about what's really going on. A lot of what Neuralink has been releasing is in the form of press release. But what they have said, you know, is that these threads did get, you know, moved out of the place they're originally in. But what they did was they took the algorithm, whatever algorithm that's accompanying the Neuralink chip, and they adjusted it. They made it a little bit more, sounds like sensitive, or a little bit better at tracing fine movement. So whatever threads that were displaced, the performance shouldn't be too affected. At least the company is telling us that because of what they were able to do on the software side, despite what happened on the hardware side.
So what could this mean big picture? Because obviously technology like this, it could be life-changing for many people. Does it mean other companies are not going to dabble in this space right now? Does it make the FDA process, which I think they were still in the middle of, even longer?
It could. It could be seen as a setback, Allison. It's not just Neuralink. There are a lot of companies working on this. We've seen over the past few years a bunch of people implanting, you know, chips in the spinal cord, for example, for people who may have had diving accidents as well. So it could be seen as a setback. But really, Allison, I think without the transparency that we would expect from a large clinical trial, it's really hard to say what this is going to mean going forward. And I think a lot of people are going to be looking at those threads that came loose. Yeah, you know, they may be working just as well as before, but is that a risk to the patient? Is that a risk to other patients in the future to have those threads kind of just floating around in the space in the brain? That's what we really want to know.
All right, well, we will keep an eye on this. We know you will. Dr. Akshay Syal, thank you so much for breaking that down. We appreciate it.
Anytime.
Turning now to our Best of Us series, where we celebrate folks who bring positivity and light to our communities. Well, one viral hairstylist in Trinidad and Tobago is making movie makeovers happen in real life. But the beauty he brings out is more than just skin deep. NBC News Digital reporter Maya Eaglin has this story.
For Anthony Claxton, being a barber is more than just cutting hair. He does it for moments like this. His makeovers have touched millions online through his Crew Cuts page, with every post gaining thousands of comments and likes, drawing followers to the genuine reactions from his clients. Some move to tears, shock, and even loud cheers when they see their new look for the very first time.
I know a lot of the times when I'm watching the videos, you can see the emotions, the tears, the excitement, but you're also very excited to see their reaction too, right?
Yes, wow. Sometimes it's a shock and awe. Sometimes it's a jaw drop. Sometimes they're jumping off the chair. And I just can't help it. I just be jumping too because I'm so happy.
And with each post that goes viral, so does Anthony's reach.
A client coming in from Australia. I've had clients come from Nigeria, often come from the US. It's crazy to me still that people will still hop on a plane to come get a service from me.
Anthony has been cutting hair since he was a teenager, and a couple of years after opening up his own shop in Trinidad and Tobago, he saw his clientele shift to primarily women. women who trust him and his team to help them regain their confidence.
Most of my clients, they experience some sort of hair issue. So whether it's alopecia or postpartum hair loss, balding, most of the times what I try to create is an overall look that can help them feel very confident when they're coming off of the chair, because that's something that they're going to have to rock for a while.
For many of Anthony's clients, it's also their journey to embracing their natural hair.
Sometimes the overall experience, those tears that you see flowing down my client's face, it has gone way beyond the actual overall look, but it taps into something totally deeper inside of them. What I love to see is how proud they are and feeling sexy and feeling edgy and feeling young and hip. And up to the time, I love when someone embraces their natural hair. It's super important when they do.
It's why the Crew Cuts team treats each haircut like a whole production. From the cut to the styling, down to a full glam session. So when they open their eyes for the first time, it's a moment they will never forget. Anthony has nearly 20 million likes on TikTok alone, and now he's working on expanding his business, traveling between the U.S. and the Caribbean. He says he hopes to continue sharing these viral fresh starts for years to come and inspiring everyone who takes a look at his videos. Ellison?
Maya, thank you. That does it for us tonight. I'm Ellison Barber. We will see you tomorrow, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.